Hello, everyone. I'm Ilona with PaleteXposure, and I have three very special guests with me today. I have Steve Reynolds, who's the proprietor of Reynolds Family Winery, and I have Adam Stemmler, who is a partner in Farm League Management Restaurant Group, and I also have Stefan Shelton, who is a partner in Lexington House in Los Gatos. You might be wondering what brought all of us together. And it's actually quite interesting because all three are titans in their own right, certainly formidable industry professionals. One of them is a winemaker, and two are predominantly involved in bartending craft. But their common denominator is that there's wine and spirits in all the backgrounds. Steve's background in tequila happened quite serendipitously. He is now a partner in a brand called Penta. Adam actually was going for a sommelier certification and came to a fork in the road that directed him towards bartending. And Stefan actually worked a couple really famous brands, Davis Bynum and Barnett in Napa Valley, and ended up mixing cocktails at the famous Martini House. And somehow that led to his career change. He actually grew up in Napa, I understand. He spent quite a bit of time there. So you can kind of starting to see that there's quite a bit of overlap in their personal biographical data, but there's also quite a bit in the substantive element of it. And we'll discuss it quite thoroughly. What are the parallels that are similar in winemaking and the bartending craft? Welcome.
Thanks, Ilona.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So let's start with you, Steve. Obviously, winemaking in Napa Valley is quite, formidable undertaking. It's one of the most famous regions in the world, and a lot of people consider it one of the blue chip regions as well. It attracts a lot of talent, and there's a huge fan base worldwide for Napa Valley. So you achieved quite a bit with your namesake brand, and you're well known for crafting some of the most delicious Cabernet blends and Chardonnays in the Valley. You would think that that was quite an achievement in and out of itself, but somehow the fate led you to becoming a distiller as well. How did that happen?
Well, there's a lot of, as you kind of alluded to, there's a lot of, let's say, sides of the tongue is probably the best way to put it. They all need to be satisfied. And, wine has always been a passion that I've had and grew up with it around, in my house. My dad was a big wine collector, and wine was shared at the table from a very young age. But let's face it, I also saw around our house some really great cocktails being made and other spirits being consumed. And they're all intriguing and they all have their place. And I think what's kind of neat in getting to know these two cool cats that we have on with us today, that, they're all kind of in the same bucket. There's some real cool similarities. And, for me, the wine thing, if you think about it, there's wines that we have to begin our evening. There's wines that we have to end our evening, all sorts in the middle to pair with various foods and lifestyles and times in our life. And, I'm sitting here just kind of, it's hitting me how relevant this is actually what we're about to talk about. So I think it's pretty cool that you're doing this.
Thank you. So before I go to Adam, I just wanted to mention to the folks watching that there's a QR code on the screen. That's our facilitator BottleVin. And if you want to know more, please go ahead and click that on the QR code with your cell phone. So Adam, you were studying to be a sommelier.
Yep.
You've been working since you're 13 years old. So that's worth mentioning because clearly you've had plenty of exposure to the working part of the bartending business.
Yep.
But then you decided to go for a sommelier certification. And then what happened?
So, my evolution coming, at various points in the industry, when I started going to college at San Diego State, I was able to get a busing job at a fine dining restaurant in San Diego called Bertrand at Mr. A's. And it was a an eye-opening experience because I had my formative years very blue collar, and I just had no clue that there was a demographic of the world that lived like that. So oftentimes when we were closing down the restaurant at the end of the night, we'd be sitting in the back buffing glasses, and all of the captains or the waiters at the restaurant, they would be sitting back enjoying wine while those of us bussers and runners were buffing glasses and doing the closing down work. And occasionally they would be sitting around talking about wine. And every now and again, I had a gentleman, his name was Dave Negretti, and he was really the person that put me on this path. But he would be like, Adam, smell this. What do you smell? And I'd be like, oh, I smell this or that or the other. And he was like, actually, that's pretty good. And then, as, I continued to work there over the years, and then, eventually I became 21 and I was able to kind of enjoy some wine with them at the end of the night as well. And I kept tasting with Dave and other guys, Rob and everything else. And at one point they all kind of pulled me aside and they were like, hey, you actually have a really good palate. If you ever want to maybe go down this road, it might be something there for you. Next thing I know, I land in a high volume nightclub bartending experience where I'm just basically a machine that's just pumping out the same 5 drinks all night so people can get back out on the dance floor and boogie and all that other good stuff. And while I was making tons of money doing that in my early 20s, I wasn't necessarily fulfilled neither from an intellectual or creative standpoint. And then I got to a fork in the road in my career where I was given the opportunity to be the beverage director of a place that was going to have a heavy wine focus. Uh-huh. And I remember those days, those late nights with Dave and Rob and some of the other captains at Bertrand and Mr. A's. And I was like, well, here's a huge opportunity for me to get another feather in my hat. So I went and took my level 1 sommelier exam. I passed. I began studying for my level 2. I'd actually scheduled my level 2 exam. And while this is all going on, I used to host wine tastings at Vin de Syrah on Friday and Saturday nights in San Diego. And I was learning more and more about the community and being in the service of wine. And eventually I kind of learned that if I go down this road and I get my certification, I'm going to want to get 3. And once you commit to getting 3, it takes over your life. And if you want to do it and you want to do it well, you kind of have to shut out all the noise and put all of your eggs in that basket. And I kind of came to this aha moment where I was like, am I willing to put all of my eggs in a basket that is going to lead me to a place where I'm really going to primarily be servicing only the upper echelon, elite, wealthy intersection of our service base? And at the end of the day, I wasn't willing to make that commitment. I wasn't willing to give up my study of cocktails at the same time. And I didn't want to be pigeonholed into primarily servicing a demographic of consumer base that's, hyper wealthy for the most part. I wanted to have the opportunity to service all types of different people. And I figured that going down the cocktail path was maybe a better option to be able to service a broader demographic of people, both age demographics, wealth demographics, you name it. So ultimately that was my decision to come back to cocktails. But the time I spent learning about wine and studying wine and, getting my intro certification, there are so many parallels. And I don't think the average wine drinker necessarily realizes that there are so many parallels between wine and spirits and cocktails. Because at the end of the day, you're looking to create something dynamic. You want to make something that tells a story, and you want something that finishes with some sense of balance. And that balance can be slightly skewed in one direction or another. But a good wine should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should be dynamic. It should take you on a little journey. It should tell you a story. And at the end of the day, we aim to do the same exact things with cocktails. We just use different tools. I think Steve knows that at the end of the day, he's using Mother Nature. He's planting at a certain time of the year. He's irrigating a certain way because he needs to get bricks of sugar up in the grapes, but not too much because he doesn't want his wines to taste flabby or anything else. I think we take the macro principles about how to make a good cocktail are almost identical to wine. We just have different methods to get there. And maybe Stefan, you can talk to us a little bit about your experience and your parallels between the two.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. It's well said. It's interesting. We definitely have parallels with Steve and of course Adam with my experience and how I got started into cocktails and such. And this was up in Napa Valley. Thought I wanted to make wine and tried it at Davis Bynum and Barnett, and was going to school and studying wine. And I ended up, been in business for many years, busing when I was like 16. But went to this place called Martini House, dropped a resume off looking for a serving job. And so this guy named Pete Sitnick, which is just an incredible man who showed me a lot. It's from Coleto restaurants back in the Coleto days, Boulevard and Fairlawn and also Martini House. He goes, "Hey, well, I'm not looking for a server, but I need a bartender. Can you bartend?" I'm like, "Sure, I can bartend. Why not?" Next thing you know, I'm making cocktails and cranking it out at Martini House and watching droves of people come in from the wine tasting world and come in like, "You know what? We've been tasting wine all day. We want cocktails." So here I am trying to like make cocktails, pour beautiful glasses of wine, doing 6, 7, 8 course tasting menus with wine pairings, and trying to make like 6 different types of mojitos and margaritas and martinis. I'm like, this is an interesting time. This is 2005, 2006, where people are enjoying wine but still want a great cocktail. So I really found my niche and found my groove on making cocktails and really enjoyed doing it. So next thing you know, I'm backing out of the wine world. No offense, Steve, but I still love wine. And my approach from that point at Martini House and what Adam touched on is making cocktails is very similar. My approach anyway is there's parallels there. It's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and making good drinks and making balanced drinks, and to appease to those people who just came in from wine tasting all day long to having a refreshing cocktail, but still have a bridge that gap was the unique challenge for me. And I love doing it. So, and it's still a social event, right? So you're still serving something that people really enjoy. So that's what it kind of comes down to. So to Adam's point, what I do now here down in Los Gatos at the Lexington House is I open a restaurant, I serve great food, serve great wine, serve great cocktails. It's all together. At the end of the day, it's just about putting out a good product that you really believe in and that your heart and soul believes in, and watch people get happy and have a few drinks and have some wine and the day is done, right? That's really what it boils down to. So that's kind of where I am, and I'm happy to be on this little segment here to kind of give my 2 cents on cocktails and such, and how that gap is bridged between wine and the spirit world. Because really, at the end of the day, it's just booze, right?
Indeed. As I was listening to you guys share your personal stories, one thing became very clear. You're all creators. You're all makers. Obviously, Steve crafts wines, and then Adam, kind of your relationship with yourself led you to the realization that you wanted to make something with your hands. You wanted to put something in front of the consumer that's a combination of your vision for what's in a glass. And the same for you, Stefan. Clearly, you like, the action part of it, the production part of it. And that's also a unifying characteristic that I really respect. We're here really to spotlight one specific spirit in this program, which is tequila. That's very near and dear to my heart. And I know you guys are going to be making some deliciousness in short order here, some cocktails. But first, I wanted to find out, what is your relationship like with tequila as a beverage? What is the significance of that spirit in your professional and personal world? We'll start with you, Steve.
Okay, for me, I know we've talked on a few series together that, my whole love for tequila really started personally with a bunch of friends. I can remember a couple guys in the wine industry that were a little crazy like me, Chris Benziger, the Benziger boys over in Sonoma. And we traveled together quite a bit, and they taught me a lot of the ropes actually about selling, making wine, promoting wine, the life of wine. But in the background of this whole wine venture that I was going through was this little thing we enjoyed sort of privately, which was tequila. And it was just sort of this, it was beer and tequila. And it just sort of was one of those things that really not too many people spoke about, but we started noticing, oh, hey, here come the bad, here's naughty Steve Reynolds and bad Chris Benziger. And, we'd have these parties in Aspen Food and Wine. And of course, we had these little cards we handed out, and after the main event, it said, you can blame the altitude, you can blame whatever, but, join us for a tequila tasting after the wine event. And we saw that first year that we did that, this Congo line of people coming up the hill to our one bedroom studio condo. We ended up with like 300 people from the tent coming to taste tequila from one of the US's like prime food and wine events. And we were just like, okay, there is something here, right? And that led, of course, as I've told you, to me honoring my field workers, which I think all of us agree, the hard work that's done by our Hispanic population here in California, whether it be restaurants, no matter wineries. For me, my guys all work so hard. So I've tried to honor them with a little, celebratory tribute toast at the beginning of every wine dinner. So that was sort of all of my kind of history with tequila. And it's just amazing once I got involved with it and started to go to Mexico and get involved in production, eventually starting my own brand with 4 great partners, how closely, from the production to everything about tequila, how soil driven, how growing, how making, how similar it is to wine. And to me, really, that's it. That was how my whole overlap and link between tequila and wine occurred. And I'm a huge fan of margaritas and cocktails, so I can't wait to see what these guys create.
Fun. Adam, what is your relationship with tequila like?
For me, it starts much younger because I grew up in San Diego, and my parents got divorced when I was 2. So we were always kind of moving around quite a bit, trying to find the cheapest living situation we could that also had, some semblance of a decent school system for my brother and I. So we moved around a lot, and quite a bit growing up. We would live in very heavily Hispanic areas of San Diego. So culturally, Mexico always felt like part of my identity and part of my upbringing. At least once a month, whether it would be with my dad on the weekends or sometimes with my mom on the weekends when I would be with her, we would go down to Tijuana and just go down there and shop and enjoy just being on the other side of the border. So from a very early point in life, some of my earliest memories of being a little kid are walking around Tijuana and, haggling with the street vendors about the price of things and buying trinkets and eating TJ dogs and just kind of enjoying our time down there. And then as I got older, I had a really unfortunate experience when I was in high school where a friend of mine drank way too much tequila one night when we were in high school. And for those of you that are watching this, I want to be real clear about something. There is no such thing as a bad tequila experience. There is only experience with bad tequila. I won't say what brand we were drinking, but I'll give you a hint. It had a gold label, and we drank way too much of it. And I felt awful the next day, and I couldn't even smell tequila probably for about 5 to 7 years after that. Flash forward to my mid-20s. I'm randomly in Las Vegas one night at a Army dinner that's honoring my older brother. He was actually receiving a Bronze Star at this Army dinner. And sure enough, while I'm waiting in line to get up to the top of the World Restaurant at the Stratosphere Hotel, I meet a gentleman by the name of Guillermo Souza. And it's a really interesting story how we met. I kind of helped him get to the front of the line and get up to a tasting that he was doing with the bar manager up there. We exchanged contact information. I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, he called me on the phone randomly, came to my house, picked me up, went out and started drinking some tequila. And I was lucky enough to taste his tequila maybe about 6 or 8 months before that happened. So I'd started to redevelop my taste and my love for tequila. And when I tasted Fortaleza for the first time, I was like, wow, this is nothing like that awful tequila that ruined me that one night in high school. So I was getting my confidence back to be like, okay, I can start to consume this again. Because literally in my early 20s, I couldn't even smell tequila after that experience. And then getting to go down to Mexico for the first time with Guillermo, or not Mexico for the first time, but Jalisco for the first time, and seeing the town of tequila, and then seeing his property, because he has a very old production facility. And it almost reminded me of a small, quaint winery. And then all of those kind of parallels were being drawn. And I saw the way that the agaves were being farmed and the amount of work that the fields needed in order to make these plants come to full maturity and make sure that you have a good raw agricultural product to start with. And then just, Steve and I have talked about this off camera, and just all of the little variables. And it's just the amalgamation of all the little things you do in the process that make something at the end that's so incredibly special. So for me, it was connecting the dots of growing up in proximity to the border, going through those early days as a bartender and everything else, and then coming full circle when I got a chance to go to tequila for the first time. And I'll tell you what, when you walk into a a tequila distillery and you smell that bagasso fermenting and everything else, it burns a memory in your brain that you'll never be able to get rid of. And I mean that in the absolute best way possible.
You know, before we move on to Stefan, I just want to point out this nugget of wisdom that I think is really worth highlighting. There's no such thing as bad. It should be on a t-shirt, by the way. It's not about, but it's about bad product, basically, is the bottom line. It applies across the board, whether it's tequila, any other spirit, wine. If you think you don't like X, please give yourself a chance.
That's right.
And try an elevated version of it.
Absolutely.
Splurge a little, do a little research, but don't pigeonhole that specific product X into I don't like it, because you just really don't know what you don't know at this point. So anyone watching and listening, you have a little bit of a homework to do. Whatever spirit that you're mad at, go let it change your mind. Go find a good version of it. Stefan.
It's okay. I have a good story about that Sunday. The word Stephen. So I'm an identical twin. So I'll let you figure it out from that point what his name is. So yeah, I guess my tequila thing was when doing winemaking up in Napa Valley, or not winemaking, I shouldn't say that, working a few crushes. And of course the vineyard guys and everything else tequila was the drink. And I was studying viticulture with the winemaking, of course, and they were talking about just the, not a correlation, but the idea of agave plants and the age process. And obviously we all know this. We should know this, I guess. Wine, grapevines are probably not really good to the third or fourth year at the minimum, right, to make really tasty wine. Well, agave is the same idea, right? Difference between inexpensive tequila, which is 100% agave, versus more tequila is 100% agave. Why is it costing $80 versus $40? Well, it's a 10, 15-year-old plant. It's this development. It's the terroir. It's all those things that get involved with tequila. So, and I met my partner. She, we're not married yet. Someday. I met her at a water bar in San Francisco. She's a huge tequila fan. So the love just kind of connected together. So my love of tequila really is about the terroir thing, really, more than anything else. And the correlation between wine. I think one of the few spirits, next to mezcal perhaps, that tequila is very, very, very terroir driven as far as spirit goes in my experience. So, and how the aging of the wood, reposado or añejo, and the time that it takes to make that tequila and how long it rests really imparts unique flavors that I think is very, very synonymous with wine. So that's kind of where my aspect is. With cocktails and tequila, I keep it simple. I try to enhance the spirit more than kind of cover it up. As like gold label stuff, we don't want to cover it up with the margaritas are great, but I think you want to enhance those good tequilas. So that's kind of why this video kind of made sense to me, and this production, I joined in on it for that reason. So here I am.
That's great stuff. So Adam, you touched upon, and actually Stefan as well, the storyline of what a great experience is, what a great beverage experience is, whether it's wine or a spirit such as tequila, which is beginning, middle, and end. So the beginning is essentially aperitif, and Steve has a long-standing tradition of starting his wine dinners with tequila. And I know you guys serve a lot of aperitifs in your respective establishments, so I think it's apropos that we start with that as well.
All right, great. So I'm going to honor Steve's tradition of lubricating his wine dinners and getting people warm and fuzzy and happy at the beginning by offering a little tequila. And I'm going to incorporate that into a low ABV cocktail, really what we would consider like part of the greater spritz category. And brands like Aperol have done a really good job of growing this category. It's just a low ABV beverage that's meant to be drank at the beginning of a meal or even before a meal to kind of introduce you to softer flavors so you don't get palate fatigue too early in your experience. And you get an opportunity to kind of put a couple toes into the pool before you jump in immediately. So we're going to kind of talk through the fundamental building blocks about what makes this drink. And then maybe I'll kind of go back and forth with Steve about how we achieve certain flavors. Because at the end of the day, there are really only 5 flavors that you can taste on your actual palate, right? Or tastes, if you will. And then flavors are those 5 individual components in conjunction with what you can smell in your olfactory. And then that comprehensive experience creates what our perception of various flavors are. So those, to my knowledge, it's sugar, salt, bitter, sour, and umami being the fifth one. And that's why a margarita with a little bit of salt on the rim is arguably the greatest or the most popular cocktail in the entire world, United States for sure, because it resonates on all 5 of those flavor receptors. So with cocktails specifically, we have, 2 major categories of cocktails. We have shaken drinks, which usually contain some type of citrus fruit juice. And then that provides our acidity that brings balance to the cocktail. Or we have stirred cocktails that usually are spirit, sugar, and some type of bittering agent only. And those style of cocktails rely on bitters to allow that full balance and that full experience to come together. Steve, in the wine world, obviously we rely on bricks of sugar to elevate the flavors of grapes. But where do you look for your counterpoint to make sure that you're putting out a balanced wine?
I think probably acidity is one of the major driving points. The byproducts of sugar, of course, phenols, are those things, this class of things that we capture. So we're looking for bitterness, astringency through tannic acid and tannins, and that can come from various parts of the grape, from the seed, from the skin, from the wood that we age things in. Things have changed a great deal in the wine world, and technology's advanced quite a bit. And, we've learned even things like color, as ironic as it sounds, that anthocyanins, the pigmentation that's in a grape, can actually help as a backbone to form flavor molecules. So we're getting into things now that are so crazy that we're even finding that color influences flavor. Umami, that thing is such a wonderful thing. That could be in and of itself a great topic to discuss someday. But pairing, so here it goes, right? So this now starts to be this machine that rolls down the hill of influencers and things. For me, with wine, it all starts, of course, in the grape. The best things is you can't make anything without great product, right? So the best grapes you can grow, that's a given. Then when it comes in, we're playing with things, as I described, acidity, etc. But it depends on what you're pairing it with. So I'm not going to get off topic here. I'm going to stay on topic, but I will say that drink and how you mix it really has a meaning of where it's going. For me, wines, I always put myself in a place of, where is this? Am I making this wine to just drink by itself? Am I making this wine to pair great with food? Because they're very different beasts. Obviously the magic is when you nail one that just sort of works everywhere, right? But anyway, I won't get off topic, but I hope that helped a little bit, Adam.
Well, that's great perspective. And I think, connecting those dots for people that are maybe only in the wine world, but are interested in cocktails, that's really important for us to provide this information, because at the end of the day, we want to expose people to as many delicious things as possible. So I'm going to jump back into the cocktail that I have for you guys today. So this is a.
Yeah, can I drink while you talk?
It's 5 p.m. somewhere in the world.
Just making sure. Okay.
Can I just point something out? Since you're pouring Penta Tequila, it just occurred to me as we were talking that those 5 elements, of course, the 5th element being umami, the same exact building blocks keep coming up, but they have to be 5 of them. There's a water, sugar, acid, alcohol, tannin, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So your tequila is obviously named because of, it's not obvious, but your tequila is named after the 5 states that the agave comes from, the blue rubber agave, and 5 partners. But that number 5 keeps coming up.
Hold on, wait a sec. 5 fingers, 5. We could be on this hidden thing here. I'm not sure, but
there's something going on, some underlying energy.
Right. Absolutely.
Sorry, Adam. Go ahead. We were dying. Obviously.
Yeah. So for this cocktail, I'm going to be relying on my counterweight, the thing that brings balance to the force, if you will, through the means of acidity that we're going to get from citrus juice. Oftentimes people with tequila, their brain immediately goes to limes, and I get it. Limes are, more synonymous with Mexico and the Southern Hemisphere in general. Once you go south beyond that, but tequila is one of the spirits that, believe it or not, plays just as well with lemon juice as it does with lime juice. Brown spirits oftentimes lend themselves to wanting to be binding with lemon juice. Rums oftentimes really prefer lime juice. But tequila and gin and mezcal as well are a few spirits that play equally as well with either. So we're going to rely on lemon juice for this drink. Unfortunately, there's construction going on at my bar today, so I'm doing this from my living room, but I think I have everything I need. So I went ahead and pre-squeezed some lemon juice. I strained out all of the pulp because we don't want any of that in our drink. And we are going to start with 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. And for those of you guys that ever go to a good cocktail bar, we almost always build drinks with our cheapest ingredients first. That way, if we were to make a mistake at some point during the production process, we have to dump out sugar and juice, not spirit and cordial. So we always build things with almost in a reverse order than your brain might automatically go to. So I've got my 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice in my tin right now. This is a cinnamon syrup that we make in-house, and it's actually really easy for you guys to make at home. You would just steep cinnamon sticks in water and get like a really dark, what I would call like a cinnamon tea, if you will. And then you let that cool, you take that off your stove. Ideally, if you have a scale at home, you would weigh the weight of that cinnamon tea once you pull out the cinnamon sticks, and you would add the same amount of weight in just white refined sugar, and you would just stir that up to make a syrup. If you don't have a scale at home, you can do this by volume. It just won't be as exact of a science because temperature stretches out the volume of water. It can vary. So like, for example, the volume of 80-degree water and the volume of 60-degree water are going to be different because as water gets warmer, it gets more expansive. Whereas 8 ounces by weight of water is always 8 ounces is always 8 ounces. So if you have a scale, I always recommend using weight as your metric when making raw ingredients, but volume works if not. So I'm going to take just a little over 1/4 ounce of this cinnamon syrup. So there's bringing sugar into the equation, just like Steve, I would assume bricks of sugar and grapes kind of provides more fruit and more flavor. So cinnamon being one flavor that we're building off of, the second being grapefruit. This is a Pamplemousse Rosé product from a brand called Combier. It's just a grapefruit liqueur. Once again, I'm doing about 1/4 ounce of this, maybe slightly more than 1/4 ounce.
How important is it, Adam, to be precise in your measurements? Does it really influence the cocktail itself if you overpour a little bit or underpour of any of the elements?
I mean, from my vantage point, absolutely. But if you're making drinks at home, the only person you're going to disappoint is yourself. I have to make drinks. Yeah, I have to make drinks professionally for guests, and I'm of the belief that consistency is the utmost important thing. So we measure everything every time, no matter what, to give the most consistent experience possible. I don't think Steve or Stefan would throw caution to the wind when they're making things that they ultimately need to be able to stand behind with confidence and serve to people. So in a professional setting, I'm going to measure everything every time. At home, I'm not going to lie, I don't always measure drinks at home. And if I don't like it, I know who to blame.
Good to know.
So moving on to our next ingredient. This is a Bianco style vermouth from Carpano. Bianco style vermouths are right in the middle of sweet and dry. They have a little bit more sugar than a dry vermouth, but the sugar is not caramelized like in the case of a sweet vermouth. And this is a wine-based product. So for those of you guys that are wine drinkers out there, try a vermouth spritz on your own time. You get a freshly cracked bottle of vermouth, whether it be dry, Bianchi, the sweet styles with a little bit of soda water and a little citrus zest over the top. It's unbelievably beautiful, and it starts off as a wine base. So we're going to go ahead and do 1.5 ounces of this Blanc style vermouth. And then lastly, I'm going to get a little Penta Tequila going in here. I love the way grapefruit and cinnamon play together. So because we're doing grapefruit and cinnamon, I wanted to have some wood flavors in this as well. And I'm using tequila as a modifier, not as a base ingredient in this cocktail. So we're going to have a lot of those tequila flavors kind of lingering in the background. But this is going to be a really kind of citrus, grapefruit, baking spice driving forces. And the Carpano Bianco has a little bit of a anise fennel flavor that kind of plays with these flavors really nicely as well. So I have a 1/2 ounce of Penta Tequila, bringing my, base of this roughly to about 2 ounces. And anytime I make a spritz style drink, I always shake it a little bit less because I find that these cocktails do better with less dilution because they're softer flavors. So we don't necessarily want to shake them as hard or as long. So I have a single large ice cube in this tin. I'm going to literally just give it. That's it. And then I'm going to go grab a nicely chilled glass and we're going to strain this off.
It's really an important piece of the whole puzzle, a nicely chilled glass. It seems like a minor detail, but I've learned through my own home experiences how much of a difference it really makes. And it takes no time to throw it in the freezer, but trust me, it works. This is such a fun exercise too, because you guys can experiment with all kinds of components, of versions of the components that Adam described.
So I've got a frozen wine glass here, kind of bringing this whole tequila wine thing back full circle. And I have one giant ice cube that I froze in a silicone style Tovolo tray. I'm going to go ahead and strain this right out.
I'm starting to feel jealous. I wish I was the sampler of said cocktail.
I wish you were here too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull the screen down. And then, because we didn't over dilute this by a ton of shaking, we're gonna go ahead and finish this off with just a little bit of soda water. I could easily use a sparkling wine, but in this particular case, because we already have some sugar from the syrup and from the grapefruit liqueur, I wanted a drier bubbles to kind of put on this that has no sugar. So this is just some soda water that we're gonna pour over the top to make this a true spritz. And then lastly, just because you're at home doesn't mean you can't make your cocktails look pretty. So we're just gonna throw a couple little lemon wheels in here just to kind of feel that we're out, even though we can't be right now with everything that's going on. So yeah, anytime you guys, cinnamon, grapefruit, great flavor profiles. I love the way they play with tequila. And here's a little Friday afternoon spritz for you guys. Wish you were here drinking with us. And Steve's already got a glass in his hand.
I'm going to jump in every time I can.
Good man.
And this is like the perfect way to start a meal or to maybe greet a guest that comes into your house before you start eating. And then, when you kind of get into your meal and you want to move into some more robust flavors that can maybe be sometimes even on the simpler side, you can kind of parlay into more stirred style drinks. Stefan, I understand you might have something for us today as well.
My focus today is kind of like what Adam touched on a little bit, was kind of that meal kind of a thing. When I opened my restaurant, I always wanted to do cocktails, and what's the same approach as wine? Have a cocktail that's at beginning, middle, and end, but does it go well with food? I mean, the idea of eating dinner and having a cocktail probably 5-10 years ago was well, that doesn't make any sense. That's weird. I mean, it should be having wine as my dinner, right? So my approach has always been, all right, well, how do we bridge that gap? So, and going back to what the 5 points are, I don't know, the umami and the bitter and sweet and such, and old fashions kind of is my number one favorite cocktail, I think, because it is a definition of what a cocktail is. I mean, it's any kind of booze. We have booze, water, sugar, and then, the actual, so it's 4 ingredients. We can call it 5 if you want to call ice the 5th ingredient. So there's your 5, Penta. There we go. But
the recurring theme.
Come back full circle. So I have a drink that's just an interpretation of an old fashioned, essentially. But I'm a big, huge sherry fan. I mean, I know Adam likes his vermouth, and I do as well. But I think sherry is a wine-based spirit, if you will, that I'm gonna use in my cocktail. So just based on old fashioned with tequila as the base, and a little bit of a sherry, some gum syrup, and some bitters. So I'm gonna walk through the process of making this, and it's super easy to do at home. I think once you have an old fashioned down in your repertoire of drink making, then you can pretty much do anything. But it's really about you're interchanging any kind of booze. You can do brandy, gin, rum. What else? Rye whiskey. What else, Adam? Can you put in there? Mezcal, right? All the things.
Mezcal fashions are fantastic. And I would like to just interject real fast and say, of all of the flavors that like to bind to each other, sherry and tequila is a match made in heaven. It's two of the greatest flavor profiles you could ever put together. So here we are again, tequila and something that starts off as a wine base, just coming together. Spain and Mexico coming together despite all of these years of tension. But you want to talk about these two amazing flavor profiles that love each other. That's a great call on your part.
Right on. So, all right. So I'm going to go get my tools here. You guys can see me all right? I'm going to tilt this down. They might cut my head off, but that's all right. I'm okay with that. So one of my favorite sherries is Hidalgo Pinot Sherry. It's super dry, salinity to it. Got the nuttiness and the walnuts, if you will. So that with the tequila I'm going to use, which is, where are we here? The Penta Reposado. I think it seems to be everyone's favorite, Steve. What's the deal with that?
Mine too.
I don't know why that is. I'm doing about 3/4 of an ounce of the sherry, just enough so it gives it some, you can taste it in the drink, but also the fact that you don't want to overpower that tequila. You want to keep it balanced, right? Because the tequila is the main ingredient in this cocktail. So about 3/4 of an ounce of this Pinot sherry goes into my mixing glass. Now, Adam made a good point about using the cheap ingredients first in case you mess up. I mean, honestly, this Pinot sherry is cheaper than my next ingredient, which is gum syrup from Small Hands. So, one second. Small Hands gum syrup, my favorite syrup. I mean, old fashioned, you can use, simple syrup or gum syrup. I like gum syrup just because it gets that kind of viscosity and that texture and feel to a cocktail. Remember we talked about earlier, Adam touched on it. Even Steve with wine, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a glass of wine or even a cocktail. So this kind of stands up as the drink progresses when you're having your meal. And as you finish your drink, you're going to keep that kind of thickness and that viscosity, the mouthfeel, if you will, in a drink. So that's my favorite.
Actually, such a
And to dovetail,
wine and cocktails, clearly.
to dovetail Stefan on that. So gum syrup is just a basic simple syrup that has acacia gum, also known as gum arabic, which is just a thickening agent that you get from the sap of acacia trees. And it's there to provide structure the same way that, tannins kind of can in wine. It's there to kind of add a thickening structuring agent.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just nice. It's a nice, and it's kind of stabilizes too. So it kind of lasts longer than just regular simple syrup in the refrigerator. I'm going to use, I have this little eyedropper, fancy little bottle. You don't need this at home. It's okay. All it is this. And this in a bottle, which is Angostura bitters and then orange bitters. I combine the two bitters. I mean, classically speaking, with old fashioned, you use Angostura bitters, but I like using the orange because obviously I think we know this. The orange with the tequila and the triple sec, I'm kind of using that as a backbone as my kind of bridging the gap, getting that orange flavor into my drink. So that's why we're doing that. So a couple dashes, 3 dashes, but what is a dash, right? So think of it long. It's not a drop, it's a dash. You gotta give it a hard shake. So I put 3 of those suckers in there. I like a little extra bitters in my old fashions, so that's how I do it. All right. Now we're going to tequila, the most important part, tequila. So generally on an old fashioned, you're looking at about 2 ounces of spirit, about a 1/4 ounce of any kind of sweetener, and the 3 dashes of bitters. You're just going to add some ice and stir that down. So I'm just you got to do the math, right? A little bit here. So I put 3/4 of an ounce of the sherry, a little 1/4 ounce of gum syrup. It leaves me about 1 1/4 ounces of the tequila to put in there. So I'm going to do 1 1/2 because I still want kind of that tequila to come forward a little bit. So make it a little bit larger cocktail, which I don't think Steve will complain about.
It's Friday.
Bigger's better.
It is Friday, right? It is Friday. So 1 1/2 ounces of this Reposado tequila goes in here. All right, now I have all my liquid in here, right? So the last thing you notice is, where's the ice, all right? You wait to do the ice. Do the ice last, because if you get delayed, you mess up, it's diluting down, it's watering down. Where's my glass? Where's my stir? All these things. Next thing you know, your drink is getting diluted down. So last thing you want to do is do ice. So 1 second, I'll be right back.
I hear the sound.
It's like, here, kitty, 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 kitty.
I love that.
Right? All right, there we go. Ice in here. Got a fancy little bar spoon here. I have some tools here at home. Honestly, you could use, I've used butter knives. I've used a plastic cup, a bowl to stir in. Anything you can use to stir.
Democratization.
Totally. Now, the key to this really was making a good old-fashioned, I just didn't stir very long, is the amount of ice. It's a chemistry thing, which I won't bore you with too much. But you want a good a good ratio of ice to your liquid. There's too much dilution, water's down. Not enough dilution, it's not chilled enough, and it becomes too boozy and strong. So that balance, right? So looking at this right now, there's not enough ice in there. So I'm gonna add a little more ice, let it sit, okay?
How do you know that it's not enough ice? Like what determines that?
I'm sorry, Ilona?
So you immediately said there's not enough ice. For
Correct.
me, it's not as obvious. So what determines that?
Usually you want the ice when you're stirring a drink, in my experience, and Adam can intervene as well. I always want the ice to be above the liquid. Even when I'm done stirring, I want the ice to be above it. So now think of putting your tequila in the freezer, right? Nice and chilled, but not diluted, right? This is the idea of like diluting it just enough to make it palatable, to mix the ingredients, to still not be watered down. I have so many people tell me at home, hey, I used the recipe and this did not turn out right. It tasted terrible. Like, well, how much ice did you put in there? What's the quality of ice? All those things matter a lot. Again, we're talking chemistry here. The winemaking process, the temperature of the wine, all those things equal a great end product. So this is why I wear the ice. All right. So now I'm sitting here a little bit. My ice is pretty frosty. It's nice and chilled. Now it's ready to go in a glass. So I'm going to grab my glass and get a nice fancy cube here. Oh, knocking stuff over as a matter.
You want one big cube again, right?
One big cube, yes. I like the ice cubes. Adam, sorry, I didn't make these. I bought these, so my apologies.
You didn't have to disclose it. I wouldn't have known, but
that's okay. I give a little mix of the ice because you know what? You don't want it to crack, right? So
when you make the ice at home, what kind of water should you be using?
It's a misnomer. It's all about, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, it's all about air. So if you use distilled water, you can make a decent, clear cube. But at the end of the day, it's air, which makes the ice get this form of bubbles in there. It's the gases, right? They're escaping, not have enough time to escape. You can make pretty solid, clear ice. You put it in a mold inside a cooler, inside a freezer, and time it like 23 hours and 10 minutes or something. You get a solid, clear ice cube. Adam's smirking. Intervene, Adam. What's your take on that?
Oh no, I've just got other family members doing it in the hallway right now, so I'm laughing at them.
The ice is all about really air and stuff. So you can Google it or look it up.
Yeah, basically when you freeze ice in a traditional ice tray, impurities are the last thing to kind of want to freeze. So when you see that clouding at the center of the cube, that's things like air that's trapped in the water, and then any other like impurities that could be in the ice. So that's what's kind of collecting at the middle. You guys can feel free to Google a thing online called directional freezing if you want to get really fancy at home. But if you don't want to go through all of that hardship, just get some distilled water, make sure that it settles really nicely in your freezer, and you'll get pretty clear ice.
Yeah, it's nice. It's fine. Yeah, it's nice. It's all about the experience, right? Kind of the perception is reality sometimes with ice. So just like a decent product. All right, so there's a couple different options. And it's funny, Adam mentioning grapefruit. In this drink, honestly, with the sherry, it works amazingly well with, and typically an old fashioned is a little bit, it'll garnish with cherry, a maraschino cherry, Luxardo cherry, if you will, and an orange twist, right? That's a classic old fashioned. But in this case, I think grapefruit works really well in tequila and also with the sherry. So I'm just using a grapefruit peel here as my garnish for this drink. So I'm just gonna peel a fresh piece off. All right. I'm doing presentation, so if you want, you can make it look fancy. I'm just going to use my knife and do some nice little clear, straight cuts. Here's my little piece of grapefruit twist. Now the key to this thing is just drop it in. It's not going to do anything. You just drop it in. You don't flavor profile. There's oils in the peel, so I'm just going to take it, both fingers, squeeze it over my drink, rub the rim a little bit. Voila. I got my interpretation of old fashioned with a grapefruit twist. A little bit of sherry, a little gum syrup. Deliciousness.
Hey, Stephen, do I get to drink again?
Cheers, you guys. I've learned so much. I have to say that I'm a huge fan of grapefruit, and I've never used it in an old fashioned. It's typically orange, like you said. And speaking of aperitivo, our spritz, I have to admit that after visiting Europe a number of times and seeing Aperol spritz on just about every table, particularly in Italy and France, I've developed a bit of a PTSD. So I stayed away from it largely. But after watching you guys make those drinks, the innovative twist on the old fashioned. And that I'm literally just gonna tonight make a version of the spritz with Penta.
Do it.
Fruit. I'm so inspired. And speaking of making things at home, we're recording in times of COVID, which of course means we're all pretty much stuck at home. So I guess the silver lining is that we can take this opportunity, and whatever it is that we're into, we can elevate it. If you're into tequila, go get a good bottle. And after watching this video, we'll have obviously recipe posted because I'm going to insist on it. I fully plan to utilize it. So BottleVin will help us with that QR code that I mentioned in the beginning of this video. They're going to help us out and make sure you guys are well informed on the precise ingredients that it takes to make those delicious cocktails. And speaking of current times, you guys actually are not at home. You are running your businesses in this very challenging time. So tell us a little bit about that.
Devin, why don't you go first, since you're
I'm still sitting. Yeah, I'm sitting on a sink in my back bar here. I'm a little 40-seat restaurant here in Los Gatos, and definitely interesting times. And I mean, as a business owner or any kind of person who's, my employees, my guests, the people who support me, it's been a kind of undulating flow of emotions, and whether economic emotions, personal emotions, and obligatory emotions to your staff and to your community. And the biggest challenge I've seen battling that is just doing a 360 and realizing, okay, well, I can either shut my doors or I can stay open and figure it out and be a service to my community. And it's not a, look at me, I'm, doing great things. I just want to have that balance. If I have a couple people in my kitchen that are working, myself and my manager, and we're just putting out to-go food and just serving our community 4 days a week, do it online store, kind of did this 360-degree turn, took a few days off, and now we're putting out pretty much, we call it hashtag art of boxing, putting beautiful dishes in to-go boxes and doing cocktails in bottles. We created we got some nice little bottles, doing to-go cocktails and doing some food to go, but just enough to basically break even. But again, this idea that it's a server community, keep a few employees employed, keep myself kind of going afloat, and kind of give not this, doom and gloom kind of feel in our town where every place is closed up and, with masks on and freaking out. I don't want to do that. We're just trying to abide by the rules and serve a good product. So I think that's kind of what you were kind of getting at, Ilona, how we've kind of done that. I mean, like we're not recreating the wheel here, not doing a whole new unique thing. A lot of people in town are doing it, but we're just kind of trying to avoid the whole doom and gloom and woe is me, and just, this is what we got. There's many things that come up and, throughout the history of, opening a business or running a business. And I'm sure Steve has many stories about the things he's done over the years and challenges. It's just one challenge for us. So end of the day, I'm just putting out some cool to-go food, some cool to-go cocktails, barrel aged and such, and just making it pretty simple. You can take it home and throw some ice in it. Simple instructions: shake it, put it in a glass, and you got your dinner and your cocktail. So that's kind of where we are as far as us survival mode and just kind of making it work.
I so appreciate what you just shared, because clearly there's an immense danger physically to us as a society, even, as a culture. But there's just as great of a risk besides the economics in a sense of mental health, and having the opportunity, just even the visual when you're driving by or walking by, just knowing that some businesses are open, that the lights are on. I remember when there were fires happening in the valley, and that same eerie, just bone-chilling fear was permeating, literally. I remember seeing a bar in downtown St. Helena, a very famous old bar called Annex Cantina. They had no lights on, but they were like serving beers, and they had some Mexican food out for people. It just meant so much because, hey, there's life. And that's kind of what you're doing, really. And, keeping your couple employees intact and such like that, and keeping the morale up. So absolutely big cheers, kudos to that. And I know
For sure, yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, that's big.
No, I just, I feel so grateful for people like you, because, the bar restaurant industry is going to be probably one of the hardest hit, if not the hardest, because it's such a cash intensive business. It's literally one of the hardest businesses to be in. And for you to take a tack rather than, oh my God, the sky is falling, but I'm going to do what I can and, make as much sense of it as I can and support people as much as I can. I think that's a tremendous, to me, it's true heroism. Heroes to me are not the super people. It's everyday people that think like heroes. And on that note, Steve, I just want to point out that even though there's a shutdown order, I mean, you've kept your staff, you've kept the business going, you're interacting with your consumers on the regular basis. I know people writing you long love letters, telling you how much your product has, meant, and, it brings so much value to their life experience as they open your wine. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think, there's so many similarities between, what these guys are going through with the restaurants and us, guys that are producing things that people enjoy. I think this is kind of a time I kind of look in the mirror a little bit. You get a chance to kind of look and sort of see who you are, and reflect a little bit, a little more time to think about what you're doing with everything, not only, what you're producing, who you're taking care of, and to be thankful for them. But I've also learned to use the pen, again, and set my computer aside just a little bit. You're right. We're handwriting letters, thanking our customers so much for all of them who've supported us. And I can't tell you the, that's created. Even my kids are writing letters to thank people, and they're writing back. I feel like it's kind of cool. I feel like the old, mailman on riding a horse in the Wells Fargo carriage or something. But it's just cool. In some ways, there's some really cool things happening. And to me, that's really it, is sort of getting back in touch with who we were. And you can choose to relax and kick back if that's what you need. You can decide to stand up and continue to push forward and do whatever you do. But in other words, I think this is an opportunity for people, and I hope it's going to pull us all together.
Well put. Adam, how is life for you during this pandemic?
I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of hobbies. Being a musician, I think is incredible. I think artists are in a unique position right now because we have devices to kind of occupy our time. So for me, if it means the difference between scrolling through my fear-mongering newsfeed or picking up a guitar and maybe taking an online class, I'm going to take the former 100 times out of 100. So I've been really trying to refine becoming a better musician, spending more time with my amazing fiance, reconnecting with old friends via Zoom conferences, just like we're doing today. To Steve's point, handwriting letters to people, I think, is a really kind of like fun thing to be doing right now. And, I think one of the interesting things about a crises situation is that they have a tendency to be transparency catalysts. And what I'm seeing is that petty people are becoming pettier. Tribal people are digging their heels down and becoming more tribal, and they're playing the us versus them game. Empathetic people are going out of their way to try to be there for their community members, and leaders are stepping up and showing leadership. So I feel like each of us kind of has a unique decision to make for ourselves. It's like, history is being written right now. What do you want? If there were to be a history book about you during this time, what do you want that book to say? And I don't want to be the person that is being petty or being more tribal. So we're really trying to pivot our business models around community and trying to service as many people as possible. We've set up some campaigns to feed some first responders at hospitals in and around the Oakland area. We're putting together campaigns to make sure that our service industry friends who have been furloughed from their jobs are staying fed. We've introduced a whole new line of frozen foods for people that don't feel completely secure about letting someone else cook their food right now. We have prepackaged food that you can take home, put in your oven, for, X period of time, and know beyond any shadow of a doubt that what you're eating is safe. And getting an opportunity to just be introspective and reflective, and at the end of the day, trying to take as many things to be grateful about as possible, because I think there's plenty of research that says that the people that outwardly show gratitude have a tendency to have better orientations in life, and they have a much more healthy relationship with reality. So I'm taking every opportunity I can to be grateful for as many things as possible. And usually for me, that comes by the means of service of other people. So far, our Oakland location, since the pandemic has started, I think we have now fed somewhere between 15 and 1,700 homeless people, service industry people, and medical first responders. So we're kind of coming up on 2,000 meals that we've provided for various people through various campaigns, and some of it that we've donated ourselves. And that's really what's kind of keeping me going right now, is just the opportunity to reconnect with the community and try to be as positive as possible.
What a beautiful sentiment. Really, as horrendous as this crisis has been, as Steve pointed out, it put a mirror to our faces. Who do we want to be as human beings? And this is an opportunity, as all of us on some level face our own mortality. What legacy would we want to live in the end of the day for our immediate surroundings, for our family, friends, but also as citizens, as humans? And it's so important to think about those things. I've always viewed wine in my life as a great facilitator, and certainly by extension, spirits became that as well. A well-executed cocktail makes you smile, makes you happy. Take this opportunity to make something, to craft something for your family members, for somebody that you have not had the opportunity to really spend a lot of quality time with because we're all in the rat race. Use those moments wisely, and have those deep conversations, because you never know if you will be opportunity to have it later on. When we say life is short, now we're finding out that that's not just a common statement. It could be cut very short. And those of us that are really aware of that, I think at the end of the day, are the drivers of the future of our society. You've just met three people that are intensely connected to themselves, that are creators, that are craftsmen, that are truly aware of what matters. I hope that you got as much value out of this programming as I did. I know that it was inspirational, aspirational, practical tips, all great stuff. I cannot wait to meet you again in our next get together. We'll have lots to discuss. We always do. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Sauce and drink left, Adam? Cheers. You got it. Very good. Right. Cheers, guys. Thank you, Ilona. I appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Adam.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. All right. Until next time, guys.